I get to speak with Melissa, as Dan mentioned. She is the Chief Compliance Officer at FFF Enterprises. They're a specialty pharmaceutical distribution company and also a friend of the lab. We've had Melissa on a few other versions. I know she's been in person speaking at the summit, so I got a chance to meet her there and really get to engage with her. So I'm happy to welcome you to the program. Hi, Melissa. How are you doing?
Hi, Riley. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Excellent. Well, I know you, but for those that don't know you, can you please start by giving a brief introduction and talk a little bit about your background and the work that you do at FFF Enterprises?
Sure. So I'm a lawyer by training, spent about 10 years in private practice at large law firms, and then I made the transition into in-house counsel at Merck. And after working for them and another larger pharmaceutical company, I moved to FFF Enterprises as their chief compliance officer. And throughout my career, I've been able to have the good fortune to work on projects that related to women's health, whether it was products that were specific to that, or Merck for Mothers, which I worked on when I was at Merck, and really sparked an interest that I have in kind of maternal health and well-being, as well as just female health in general, and recognizing that it's important. And I think a big piece of that is mental health that is unfortunately not given the attention that it deserves in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always appreciate when we get, FFF folks on our program. So thank you for being here. And what we're going to talk about today is around leadership. It's around, compliance. It's around, communication, teamwork, partnership. So let's start with, talking about the leadership piece. So in what ways can creative and solution-oriented leadership approaches be utilized to address some of these women's health concerns in the workplace, and looking at both short-term needs and long-term needs for business sustainability?
I think the first step in that is to make sure that there's open lines of communication. It's really critical for leadership to understand, how their employees are feeling, what issues they're facing. And so there needs to be an ability for employees to share those feelings up the management chain, for management to be interested in understanding that, as they craft policies and think about how they're going to treat their employees or how policies might impact their employees. That's really critical. And I think, one way where I've seen this really go through kind of a transition, but frankly, we still have a lot of work to do, but is, the treatment of pregnant women at work who, obviously there's you're growing another human inside you. And so, there's a lot of health issues that are tied up in that. And, are we encouraging them? Are we making them feel supported? Or are we making them feel guilty and bad for being pregnant? And I think that's, probably step one, is just the general reaction to, someone who is in that position. But I also think, there are policies, and this is kind of where the compliance, framework comes in. And, I think a lot of people in that space are involved in policy work. And so being able to encourage the company to, have policies that are supportive of both, moms and dads, after child birth, because, obviously the woman's body needs to heal. I mean, that's a medical issue, right? But in addition, you have a new child to take care of. And I think, recognizing that takes time and it takes some adjustment. And we should give people that time. We really should be looking at these, the European countries who do a phenomenal job of letting women bond with their children and letting fathers do that too. And I think, also providing that paternity leave so that the father can be there to support the mother or the spouse. If it's not a father, that's fine as well. And we need to recognize those situations. And so I think for me, thinking about just different ways in which there might be unique health challenges for women, and childbirth is obviously a major one. And just in my years in the workforce, I've seen a major shift at least in, my employers, in terms of, kind of the attitude towards that. And, is this going to hurt my career? And you talked about short-term and long-term growth of the business. I mean, I think there are studies out there that show that employees who feel valued, who feel supported, do a better job, right? They're more likely to be successful, and therefore your company's more likely to be successful. And so I think it's very short-sighted for a company to not focus on that health aspect of your employees and making sure that they feel supported and valued.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on that communication piece. What are some of the biggest barriers or obstacles that you found when trying to implement these open lines of communication, and how can you try to overcome those?
I think you can communicate all you want, but at the and it's important that we do communicate those things. But I think one of the biggest factors that is a barrier is time. It really is. I think women in particular, especially those who work and who have family obligations, whether it's kids, whether it's aging parents, whether you're just managing a household, there just never seems to be enough time in the day. So, having the communication is the first step to know that that your employer or workplace supports you taking care of your health. But I think there are other things that kind of that next step that employers can do to be proactive about it. And so some of the things that I've seen are, giving an employee a day off specifically for the purpose of, tending to the health, your health care or the care of a loved one, to say, you don't have to use a vacation day.
Yeah.
This is a paid time off. Go get a mammogram, go have your annual, checkup, go, take your, aging parent to the doctor, whatever that may be, but really giving people permission to take that time to manage their mental health. And another great example I've seen of that is, there are a lot of health centers and healthcare providers, some of the bigger systems that offer like mobile mammograms, or I've even seen a mobile dentist, but, being able to provide that for your employees, to come on site and say, here, we're going to make this easy for you. You don't even have to leave our, facilities, to go get this done. And by the way, by doing that, you're giving them permission to make an appointment, set it on your calendar, come, we're bringing this to you. We value it. We think it's important. And so I think those are a couple of really great ways I've seen, employers go beyond the communications phase and say, not only do we want you to do this, we're going to try and enable you to do that.
Yeah, it's a great example of, the importance of teamwork, which is the other piece of this. It's communication, it's teamwork. And I've heard you discuss that idea previously in talking about, like a doctor day or like a care day, whatever it is, however you want to coin it. But it's something where it can kind of, take off that burden off of someone who's maybe putting something off because they don't feel like they have time. It's allowing them to say, okay, I can go now and do all these things that maybe I might be avoiding or ignoring. And by having a company that's, implementing something like that or supporting that, it can really make someone feel better about, needing to go take care of whatever is going on at home, opposed to what's going on in the workplace. But I want to talk a little bit more about, your perspective in being the compliance and the legal partner. How do you collaborate with the healthcare providers and experts to ensure that women's health initiatives are evidence-based, following regulations, and are effectively contributing to the overall success of your business?
I mean, I think, obviously there can be lots of different initiatives to address these things. I think, when you kind of get down to the evidence-based portion of this, you're really looking at clinical trials, right? If you're talking about treatments and making sure that we understand the female body, right? It's not just, I was actually reading an excerpt from a woman's book about, women's healthcare recently. And she talked about how, for the longest time, women were just treated as like smaller versions of men when it came to kind of medicine and treatment. And obviously, we've since discovered that's not a good approach. But I think, at the end of the day, making sure that, when if you're in an environment, whether you're a researcher or you're a company that's funding research, that your clinical trial design takes that into account and says, we need to make sure we're including enough women or female subjects in our trial. We need to make sure we're actually looking at the difference. It's not enough just to have female subjects in the trial, but you need to be able to actually look at, is the data different when we take, when we filter out and look at the female subjects. And so I think, that's a huge part of that. And then I think, you talked about kind of this leading to business success. And I've talked about this before too, but, women really control the purse strings and the decision making, at least in this country. I think the numbers are 75 to 80% of consumer purchases are controlled by women in households. And, the NIH has published data that, women make 80% of the healthcare decisions for their families. And so, I think as an employer, as a company, a healthcare provider, showing interest in and support of, dedication to women's health is such an amazing way to gain trust of those people who are making the decisions about where they're going to, spend their money and where they're going to, spend their time and resources and who they're going to do business with. So to me, that seems like a prudent business plan. So I think, all these ways, looking at different initiatives that you can do, think about the return on investment, if you will, to use business speak, of, making women feel valued, feel like someone actually cares about what's happening to them. And you're likely to see, I think, that return in the consumer decisions made by women.
That's amazing. And well, we'll end it there. We just really appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective. It's great to chat with you, and I feel like I get smarter every second I'm here talking with you. So we'll try to take up as much as we can of your time. But thank you again for coming on and sharing your insights.
Thank you, Riley. It's good to see you again.